Okay, so let's start. The topic for today is quadratic equations. So the first thing we need to know is, what is a quadratic equation? A quadratic equation is an algebraic equation of the second degree. I'm going to explain that. Let me write it first. So a quadratic equation is an algebraic equation of the second degree. Of the second degree. So this is very important. So what this means is the maximum exponent of the variable is a power of 2. Second degree means a power of 2. So if I have an equation in this form, 2x plus 1 is equal to 5. 2x plus 1 is equal to 5. This is not a quadratic equation. Although it is an equation, but it is not a quadratic equation. How do we know that this is not a quadratic equation? The exponent of x here is 1. So since we can't find any exponent, we know that the exponent there is 1. This means the maximum exponent of this equation is 1. So since this equation is of the first degree, that means 1, it means it is not a quadratic equation. But if we have something like this, for example, if we have something like this, 3x squared plus 5x plus 2 is equal to 0. This is a quadratic equation. How do we know it's a quadratic equation? The exponent of x here is 1. The exponent of x here is 2. So since the maximum exponent of x is 2, this equation is of the second degree, right? It's of the second degree. And since it is of the second degree, this is a quadratic equation. What about if we have is this a quadratic equation? X cubed plus 2x squared plus 3x plus 7 is equal to 0. This is not a quadratic equation. The reason is the maximum exponent of x here is 3. So for an equation to be considered a quadratic equation, the maximum exponent has to be 2. So out of these three equations, this is not a quadratic equation, this is not a quadratic equation, this is a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is an algebraic equation of the second degree, meaning the maximum exponent of the variable is 2. Okay. So every quadratic equation is written in the basic form. The basic So the basic form of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. A is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. A is the coefficient of x squared, b is the coefficient of x, and c is the constant. So if you don't know what coefficient is, variable is, constant is, you can learn about them on the playlist of my YouTube channel. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you check the playlist on algebra, you're going to see an introduction to all these terms. Okay. So if you have a quadratic expression in this form, 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 is equal to 0. For example, so if we want to compare this equation to this equation, that means our A is equal to 2 or plus 2, our B is equal to plus 5, and our C is equal to minus 12. So whenever you are given equation or quadratic equations, the first thing you need to identify is what is the value of A, what is the value of B, and what is the value of C. So let's do that. From this equation, A is equal to plus 2, plus 2, B is equal to plus 5, and C is equal to minus 12. So whenever you are given a quadratic equation, the first thing you have to do is identify these three things. What is your value of A? What is your value of B? And what is your value of C? What does solving an equation mean? Or what does solving a quadratic equation mean? So what we are doing here is laying the foundation upon which we are going to build. Okay? So let's write the equation again. Ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now, a quadratic equation is a relationship between the x values and the y values. So when you are given a quadratic equation in this form, it means that this 0 is your value of y. So let's draw a graph. So if you have something like this, so whenever you draw a graph of a quadratic equation, it appears in this form. So we are going to have 2 points here and here. So these 2 points are values of x when the value of y is equal to 0. These 2 points are the values of x when the value of y is equal to 0. They are called the roots of the equation. Okay? So whenever you are given a quadratic equation and you are told to solve a quadratic equation, they are simply asking you to find the roots of the equation. So instead of telling you to solve an equation, they might tell you to find the roots of the quadratic equation. They might also tell you to find the x-intercepts of the equation. Okay? Or they might tell you to find the solution to the quadratic equation. So 3 terms: solution, the roots of the equation, and the x-intercepts. And you always have 2 values. Okay? These are the points where the value of y is equal to 0. Okay? So the roots of a quadratic equation are the points on the x-axis where the value of y is equal to 0. Okay? So now let's see the methods of solving quadratic equations. What are the methods of solving quadratic equations? So basically, there are 3 methods of solving quadratic equations. The first one we're going to consider is the factoring method. The second method is the formula method. And the third one is completing the square method. So these are the 3 methods we're going to consider in this lesson.